Hello, my name is Claire Bennett. This Christmas, my family told me the holiday was canceled. No dinner, no gathering, nothing. I believed them until I saw the photos, until Instagram showed me the tree, the lights, the dinner table, and every single person there except me. This isn't just about being left out. It's about being erased by the very people who were supposed to love me most. Christmas was canceled this year, or at least that's what they said. But Instagram doesn't lie. I sat in my worn-out armchair clutching a lukewarm mug of cocoa I had forgotten to drink. The string lights around the window blinked quietly like they were sighing with me. Ethan was rummaging through the closet for more ribbon, humming a half-remembered carol. I tried to smile, one of those practiced ones that look fine to other people but feel like paper cuts on the inside. Mom had texted last night. Just a single line. Everyone's too busy this year. Christmas is off. No explanation. No apology. No smiley face to soften the blow. Just a verdict that dropped like a pebble but landed like a stone. I'm not a child anymore. I'm not naive. But still, I had hoped quietly, stubbornly, that this year might be different. That for once they'd want me there. Not out of obligation, but because I was still family. We could just do our own Christmas at home, Ethan offered, kneeling beside a roll of red wrapping paper. He was using the old craft scissors I'd had since college, and the way he said are wrapped around my chest like a warm scarf. I nodded. That sounds nice. My voice came out softer than I intended. I walked over to the window and pulled back the curtain. The street below was nearly empty. No snow yet, but the kind of cold that bites through gloves. Our third-floor apartment in Jersey was small and drafty, but it was ours. We'd done our best to make it feel like home photos lining the hallway, our mismatched mugs, bookshelves sagging with manuscripts, and a real pine tree by the window. Small but dignified, strung with vintage lights, and a wooden star I carved myself when I was 11. That star had been a gift for Dad. I remember sawing the wood, painting it gold, adding glitter until my fingers were sticky. I wrapped it in old newsprint, folded a corner into a little bow, and tucked it under the tree with a handwritten tag, "To Dad, from Claire." When he opened it, he blinked once and let out a dry chuckle. "You think this has value?" he asked, eyebrows raised, like I'd handed him a coupon, not a piece of my heart. He didn't hang it. Didn't thank me. Just set it aside like junk mail. That night, Lauren and Mark took their seats at the main table, laughing with guests in expensive coats. I sat with the kids' table, my wooden star pressed tight in my pocket like it could still mean something. I didn't ask why Christmas was canceled this year. I didn't need another half-hearted excuse. Instead, I sent a cheerful message to the family group chat around 9 a.m., wishing everyone a warm and peaceful holiday. Hope to see you all soon. No one replied. Not even a thumbs up. "You want help labeling these?" Ethan asked behind me. I nodded without turning. On the table were gifts for his coworkers, a couple for my team at Lighthouse Press, and one wrapped in silver paper meant for Emily, Mark's daughter. I had picked out an art book, the kind I loved as a kid. Emily often messaged me about school projects. She liked reading. I wasn't sure if anyone else in the family had noticed. My phone buzzed. An Instagram notification. I wasn't planning to open it, but my thumb betrayed me, tapping the screen before I could reconsider. A new story from Emily Studies. I knew the handle by heart. 10 seconds. That's all it took. A corner of a familiar living room. Warm yellow light, soft piano music. A Christmas tree that stretched toward the ceiling. The same decorations, deep red glass balls, gold ribbon. The handcrafted family sign above the mantel that read, "Christmas. Family is forever." It was unmistakable. Lauren's house. The Christmas gathering wasn't canceled. It just didn't include me. On Ethan's phone, Claire's niece had just posted a story, and in the background was a Christmas tree Claire knew all too well. It was Lauren's. Just a glimpse of Christmas lights reflected in a wine glass was enough to shatter the lie that there's no gathering this year. I stared at the screen, index finger frozen mid-scroll. The image was blurry, casual, unposed, but my eye caught the tiniest sliver of truth. In the foreground, a champagne flute sparkled under warm lighting. But what stopped me wasn't the glass, it was the reflection it carried. Tiny, multicolored bulbs curved along the window behind it. A specific kind of light string, candy-colored and vintage-looking, always tangled no matter how neatly you stored them. The kind Lauren swore by. I recognized them instantly. Zooming in didn't help the resolution much, but the outline of a familiar velvet armchair peeked out beside the fireplace. Another detail caught my attention, the corner of a dining table, just enough to see the napkins folded into triangles embroidered with LB in gold thread. Lauren Bennett. My breath caught. That napkin set had been a wedding gift from our great-aunt Elise. Lauren never used them for guests outside the family. Only the real ones, as she once whispered with a wink during one of those awful Easter brunches. Ethan leaned over my shoulder. His eyes scanned the image. Then his jaw clenched. This is it, isn't it? That's their house. I nodded. And you're telling me this is the party they supposedly canceled? I didn't answer right away. My chest tightened like a knot pulled too fast. Maybe there was still an explanation, a surprise gathering, a miscommunication. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But that knot in my stomach had a named doubt, and it had taken root long before tonight. Maybe, I offered, already hearing the disbelief in my own voice. Maybe they just forgot to include me. Ethan let out a low laugh. Forgot to invite their sister, their daughter. Maybe they thought I wouldn't come anyway, I said quietly. Or maybe they sent it through the wrong number. The excuses sounded pathetic, even to me, but the alternative that this was deliberate felt unbearable. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Zoe, a friend from grad school I hadn't seen in months. Hey, saw your sister's Christmas post, aren't you going this year? Looked gorgeous. My fingers froze above the keyboard. So the post was public now. I opened Instagram again, this time navigating directly to Lauren's profile. Nothing. Still private. Still filtered. Still sanitized. But then I noticed the tag. Emily. Of course. I clicked. There it was, multiple stories. One, a sweeping pan of the dining room. Candles, flickering plates of roast duck and truffle mashed potatoes, the kind of curated holiday aesthetic people envied. In the corner, Mark was laughing with someone I didn't recognize. Lauren raised a toast. My mother, barely visible, sat smiling at the head of the table. They were all there, every single one of them, except me. I stared at their faces, their easy laughter, their champagne flutes clinking in a house I knew down to the last corner, and I felt like a stranger peering through a window I wasn't supposed to look through. Ethan pulled the laptop closer. This is disgusting. What kind of family does this? Opened my mouth, then closed it again. What could I say that it hurt? That I still didn't understand? That some part of me had always known I was peripheral, but had hoped naively that blood meant something. I felt my cheeks burn. Not from anger, not even shame, but from the horrible clarity that settled like frost across my ribs. They didn't forget. They chose this. And then, as if to put the final nail in that coffin, my phone buzzed again. Mark. A private message, not in the group chat. Not with emojis or pretense. Just 7 words that made my skin crawl. Claire, don't make a scene. It's complicated. The story I thought had slipped by unnoticed was now a mirror, and what it reflected was deliberate. Mark messaged privately. Claire, don't make a scene. It's complicated. You don't need a family gathering to know you've been left out. You just need to be the only one not chosen. I drove aimlessly through the dark, letting the city blur past the windshield while Ethan sat in the passenger seat, silent but tense. Neither of us had spoken since dinner. The radio played something soft, something jazzy and ironic, like background music in a sad holiday film. My hands stayed at 10 and 2, white-knuckled. My mouth tasted like metal. We passed the clinic before I realized where we were. A small brick building tucked between a florist and an empty bookstore. Riverside Women's Wellness. Its soft yellow lights always made it look gentler than it was. I hadn't been inside since the winter 2 years ago. After the miscarriage. After the quiet waiting room and Dr. Elise's calm voice and the folder I never opened. I didn't stop the car, but I couldn't look away either. Do you want to talk? Ethan asked carefully. I shook my head. He sighed but didn't push. I thought of Mom. Her voice still lingered from the last voicemail she left months ago, after I told her I wouldn't be coming home for Thanksgiving. Claire, you always make everything bigger than it is. Always. Always too emotional. Always too sensitive. Always too much. But what they never understood, what they never bothered to ask, was that I had to keep things small, tidy, contained. Because if I ever opened the box, if I ever really said what I felt, it would all pour out like floodwater and drown the room. Back at the apartment, I dropped my keys onto the counter and sank into the couch. Ethan was still standing, scrolling through his phone, jaw twitching. I could feel him vibrating with unsaid things. I called Aunt Helen, he said finally. I looked up. You did what she deserved to know. She's the only one who's ever treated you like you mattered. That was true. Aunt Helen wasn't perfect, no one in the Bennett family was, but she'd remembered my birthdays, sent me books in the mail, even visited once when I was recovering from surgery. She didn't know, Ethan continued. She was shocked. Thought maybe you declined the invite. She sounded genuinely upset. I pressed the heels of my palms to my eyes. I don't want to drag her into this. She wants to be dragged in, he said. She said she'd call your mom tonight. No, I said sharply. Please, I just don't want to talk to any of them. Claire, I mean it. My voice broke. If I never have to explain myself to them again, that's enough. That's all I want. But Ethan wasn't finished. He picked up his laptop from the kitchen table and brought it over. I didn't want to show you this unless I was sure. I sat up. My heart started to thump. Someone sent this to me anonymously, he said, opening a private message. I think it was one of your cousins. They didn't say who. On the screen was a screenshot of a group chat. The name read, Holiday Planning, LB Home. I recognized the names Lauren, Mark, Aunt Marianne, Cousin Jenna, and then the message that turned my stomach. Lauren, don't worry. Claire thinks we're not doing anything this year. She won't show up. A string of laughing emojis followed. I stared at it, willing it to be fake. A joke. A misread. But it was real. The tone, the smugness, the rehearsed cruelty of someone who had learned exactly how to inflict a wound and twist the knife just enough to leave no bruises. I had spent my entire adult life believing, maybe just maybe, I was too sensitive. That I misread their tone, overreacted to their dismissiveness. But this wasn't an oversight. This was a performance. And I was the only one who didn't get the script. I closed the laptop slowly. My body felt like it was moving through molasses. I stood the movement, deliberate spine straighter than it had been in days. If they want to play a role, I said quietly, then I'll rewrite the script. Claire closed the laptop, stood up and said, if they've been acting, then I'm rewriting the script. If they staged the perfect Christmas play, then all I had to do was show up backstage. The engine hummed quietly beneath us, headlights stretching across the icy road like twin searchlights in a dream I was about to wake up from. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, not tense, but deliberate. I needed space to hold what I was about to do. Lauren's house came into view like a memory I didn't ask for. The long, circular driveway was dusted with fresh snow, and warm, golden light spilled out from the tall bay windows. A Christmas wreath hung on the door, flanked by 2 lanterns glowing with false candlelight. It looked perfect. Of course it did. I thought of the winter I was 17, the school charity gala. I had written the closing speech days of drafting, editing, rehearsing. But when the time came, it was Lauren who walked on stage and read it word for word. I watched from the audience, clapping with everyone else my name never mentioned. She'd smiled afterward, saying it was for the best because you get too emotional under pressure. Tonight I wasn't here to speak. I wasn't here to beg for answers or reclaim a seat at the table. I just wanted to see the truth. Up close. Ethan stopped the car engine idling. I placed a hand on his. You don't have to come with me, I said quietly. He shook his head. We go in together. We stepped out, boots crunching against snow. The music inside was faint but distinct, a jazzy version of Silent Night. Laughter drifted through the walls like smoke. I raised my hand to knock, then paused. Before I could touch the door, it opened, but not to welcome us. A man in catering black stepped out, tray in hand. He froze when he saw me. "Oh," he said, eyes flicking to my face, then to Ethan's. "I was told not to let anyone unfamiliar in." I blinked. Unfamiliar. He swallowed. "I was given a list of names and told to be discreet." I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a card, and handed it to him. "Claire Bennett," I said evenly. "I'm not unfamiliar. I'm family." He looked at the card like it might burn him, then nodded stiffly and stepped aside. Before I could move, the door opened fully. Lauren. She looked stunning, of course, draped in crimson silk hair, curled, lipstick immaculate. Her expression flickered recognition, then alarm, then something rehearsed. "Claire," she said with wide eyes. I thought you weren't coming." I tilted my head. "I wasn't invited." She blinked. "I could have sworn maybe it was a miscommunication." "Don't worry," I said. "I'm not here to ruin your staging. I just wanted to see it for myself." Her smile-strained mouth twitching at the edges. "Well, come in, at least say hi to everyone." But I didn't move. From the doorway, I saw the dining room alive with people, relatives, spouses, kids laughing near the fireplace. Mark glanced over and quickly looked away. Aunt Marianne avoided eye contact. And then him. My father stood by the sideboard, glass in hand, gray at the temples now, still in his favorite navy blazer. Our eyes met for a split second before he turned away, as if he hadn't seen me, as if I were the help or a ghost. That was enough. I stepped back down onto the porch, snow clinging to the hem of my coat. I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked, brows furrowed. I didn't answer. I tapped twice, held the screen up, and hit the red circle. "Good evening," I said to the camera voice. "Calm, Merry Christmas. I'm Claire, the one who got erased from her own family." Claire turned her back to the door, pulled out her phone, and started a live stream right there on the steps. "Merry Christmas. I'm Claire, the one who got erased from her own family." I didn't need to name anyone. I just told the story, and the internet filled in the rest. My phone buzzed before the sun rose. Then it buzzed again. And again. By the time I opened my eyes fully, there were over 60 notifications on my lock screen. Missed calls, message requests, tags I didn't recognize, usernames I didn't remember following. I sat up slowly, the ache in my limbs more emotional than physical. The room was still dim Christmas morning, and not a single ornament in sight. Just the blinking light of my laptop in sleep mode, the cold cup of tea from last night, and my phone screen glowing like a beacon. I opened Instagram. The live stream from the porch, me standing there in the snow, saying 13 words had been clipped, reshared, subtitled, and reposted by strangers. It had been watched 398,000 times. By noon, it would cross 500,000. The comments flooded in like a dam breaking. "This hit too close. Been there." Sat at an empty plate while they smiled at someone else. The way she kept her voice steady, I felt that. Family doesn't mean blood. It means who shows up. One user had stitched it with her own video. "I was cut out after I came out to my dad. This woman, she's saying what so many of us never could." A journalist from The Atlantic had posted a short thread. "Silence can be a form of violence. Claire Bennett's story is proof." My inbox was chaos. There were emails from strangers thanking me for speaking up, messages from advocacy groups, an inquiry from a podcast, a request for a written op-ed, and amid it all, a single ping from my sister. "Lauren, Claire, you're blowing this out of proportion. We didn't mean for things to get like this." Ethan leaned over the counter watching me read. "Still think it was a bad idea?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "I think it was inevitable." My heart pounded as I saw the next notification, of voicemail. Unknown number. But I knew that voice as soon as it played. "Douglas Bennett, my father, Claire. This is your father. I saw what you posted. If you still care about this family even a little, you'll take it down. You're making us look like monsters. You're humiliating yourself. And us." He didn't say Merry Christmas. Didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't offer to talk. Just a demand. A veiled threat wrapped in a father's tone, the kind I'd heard my whole life, measured calm, with just enough edge to make you feel childish for disagreeing. I sat back, phone resting on my knee. A message from Aunt Helen came through. She'd seen the video too. Claire, I'm proud of you. You spoke what others only whispered for years. You're not alone. I closed my eyes, breathed in, breathed out. Then I opened my notes app, typed a single sentence, and copied it into the family group chat. I don't owe anyone my silence anymore. They didn't apologize. They proposed. Damage control. The conference room smelled like leather paper and artificial calm. Claire Bennett, guest, not client. That's how the receptionist had introduced me when we arrived. The kind of phrasing designed to put you in your place. Ethan sat beside me, one ankle casually crossed over his knee, fingers laced together with studied stillness. But I could feel his pulse from where our knees touched under the polished table. Across from us, 4 people waited. A man in a tailored gray suit who introduced himself as Gerald Price, legal counsel for the Bennett family estate. Lauren, lips tight, arms folded, dressed like she was stepping off the cover of some preppy holiday catalog. Mark was there too, quieter eyes darting between papers on the table, not making eye contact. I scanned the table. A single folder sat in front of me labeled Settlement Terms. So Mr. Price began smoothly, "We appreciate you agreeing to meet. The family, particularly your father, is interested in finding a path forward that minimizes further disruption. Disruption. Not pain. Not harm. Not betrayal." "I'm listening," I said. "We'd like you to remove the live stream clip from your social media," he continued, "and refrain from further public commentary about internal family matters." In return, I asked, already tired. He opened the folder and slid a document toward me. There would be a formal statement released noting that the Bennett family remains united and private. Additionally, your name would be re-added to the family trust as well as any related press. "Forgive me," Ethan interjected, "but this sounds a lot like hush money disguised as reconciliation." Lauren finally spoke. "You've made your point, Claire," she said, voice calm but ice cold. "Dad hates being scrutinized. You embarrassed him, you embarrassed all of us. But now you've got your audience, your applause. What more do you want?" I turned to Mark. "What do you think?" He shifted in his chair, not quite looking at me. "It's your call." I stared at the paper. Neat lines, legal phrasing, the price of re-entry, silence packaged as respect, loyalty framed as maturity. "Do you want me to sign this?" I asked Ethan. He leaned in. "Only if you want to confirm what they already believe about you, that you can be bought." I closed the folder. Mr. Price adjusted his glasses. "To be clear, this offer is extended in good faith. There are reputational risks." "Good faith," I repeated. I was erased from a Christmas dinner. Publicly. Deliberately. "And this is the peace offering." Lauren's lips curled slightly. "You're overreacting. No one meant to hurt you. You didn't have to mean it," I said. "You just had to enjoy it." No one moved. No one apologized. That told me everything I needed to know. I stood smoothing my coat, then looked around the room one last time. I didn't come here to negotiate. I came to confirm that I was never chosen to begin with. If I was the stain, they chose to wipe it away, not ask why it was there. The video opened with a cozy piano riff and a soft fade-in to a living room staged like a Hallmark dream. Lauren sat between 2 oversized throw pillows, her legs crossed delicately, a mug of something too perfect to be real cupped in both hands. Mark sat beside her, slightly hunched, as if even his spine was unsure about being there. The Chiron read holiday reflections with the Bennett siblings. I watched it unfold on my laptop, arms crossed, jaw set. The production value was polished, the lighting warm and flattering, and the narrative scripted like a PR handbook. "Every family has its challenges," Lauren said gently, eyes trained on the interviewer. "But what matters most is love, forgiveness, the ability to move on together." Mark nodded with the stiffness of someone who'd been told to look supportive. "This season is about gratitude, and we're grateful for each other, for growth, and for what the future holds." I paused the video and looked at Ethan across the couch. He raised an eyebrow. "They didn't even say your name," he murmured. "They didn't have to," I replied. "Everyone knows." The comments were already lighting up. Some called the interview classy, graceful. Others weren't buying it. "Where's the other sibling? Funny how the one who spoke out is now invisible again." Love doesn't mean erasure. But the damage control was working. Slowly, I was being repositioned from victim to disruptor, from truth teller to attention seeker. It was subtle strategic. Classic. They want you to feel guilty, Ethan said, for not keeping quiet, for not playing along. The phone rang. A journalist. Another one. This one from a mid-sized podcast asking if I wanted to offer my perspective after the Bennett video. I declined. I don't need to chase their narrative, I told Ethan. They can play at Family Unity all they want. I'm building something real. And I was. That morning, buried between the hate mail and fan mail, was an email from a literary conference organizer in Oregon. They'd seen my original live stream and read my blog post. Would you be open to speaking on a panel at the Healing from Family Trauma Summit in April? I stared at the message longer than I meant to. Finally, a platform I didn't have to fight, to be heard on. One that wasn't manufactured or hollow. Ethan glanced at my screen. You going? I nodded. I think I have to. That afternoon, I opened a blank document and titled it, The Ones They Left Out. The idea had come to me days earlier, but now it rooted itself. An anthology of essays, letters, and short stories about being erased, omitted from tables, from wills, from memories. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted reclamation. I wanted to create something that said, we were here. I was halfway through outlining contributors when the doorbell rang. A courier stood there, windblown and chewing gum. Claire Bennett, he asked. Signature required. I signed, and he handed me a thick envelope. No return address. Inside was a single-page letter written in Lauren's immaculate script. Dad is rewriting the will. This may be your last chance. I used to apologize just for existing. This time, I stood and felt no shame at all. The spotlight wasn't harsh. It was warm. Intentional. A soft amber hue spilling over the wooden podium, casting gentle shadows across the small stage at the Oregon Family Trauma Summit. My palms weren't sweaty. My voice wasn't shaking. That surprised me. In the audience, maybe 100 faces. Older women with silver-streaked hair and notebooks on their laps. Young men sitting forward alert. A middle-aged couple holding hands like they were bracing for impact. Ethan sat in the third row, eyes locked on mine. A quiet anchor. I stepped forward. My name is Claire Bennett, it began. And I was erased from my family, not in one moment, but over 1,000 small ones. The room hushed. They didn't slam the door. They just stopped opening it. They didn't scream, "You don't belong." They smiled and changed the locks. I took a breath. Last year, I saw a story on my niece's Instagram. A tree. The family Christmas tree. A detail no one outside our family could recognize. And yet there it was, proving they had gathered without me. After telling me there was no gathering at all. A few audience members shook their heads in disbelief. Someone in the back muttered, "Unbelievable." But here's the truth. I continued, my voice steady. I wasn't excluded once. I was chipped away quietly each holiday, each milestone, each whispered conversation that ended when I entered the room. That's how erasure happens in families like mine, politely, neatly. I paused to let it land. They didn't disown me because I failed. They disowned me because I didn't comply. A few people began to nod. Others blinked away emotion. I'm not the disgraced daughter, I said. I'm the survivor. Applause broke out, not thunderous, but deep. Sustained. Real. I stepped back, hands trembling now, but not with fear, with release. Backstage, someone handed me a bottle of water and a tissue I didn't realize I needed. A woman in her 70s approached, her lipstick faint and eyes red-rimmed. You just said everything I've never dared to say, she whispered, voice cracking. Thank you for speaking out loud what I've only thought in silence. I embraced her gently. You're not alone, I said. None of us are. Later that day, the summit organizer found me in the lounge area where Ethan and I were sitting with paper cups of tea. Claire, he said, pulling up a chair that was more than a keynote. That was literature. If you're willing, we'd like to publish your speech as a small volume. We'll fund the first edition ourselves. I blinked. You want to print it? He smiled. People need to hold these words, not just hear them. I didn't have to think long. Yes, I said. Absolutely. That night, back at the hotel, I checked my messages. There was one from an unknown number. Claire, I saw you speak today. I was once your father's attorney, and I have something you should see. Turns out I was never excluded. I was hidden. The cafe was warm in the way older places tend to be, wooden counters rubbed smooth by years, windows slightly fogged with breath and espresso steam. Valerie Ames, once my father's attorney, sat across from me with her scarf looped twice around her neck, her eyes sharp despite the softness in her voice. She'd ordered chamomile tea. I was too nervous for anything but water. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "I wasn't sure either," I admitted. "But your message." She nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out a worn leather folder. She placed it between us, like a confession. "This," she said, tapping the edge, "is the original will, dated March 2013. I hesitated, then opened it. My breath caught. My name was there, in ink, in type. Claire Elise Bennett, to inherit the Lakeview property and its contents upon the testator's passing. The Lakeview property. The winter home. The house my mother decorated with hand-carved snowflakes and antique pine cone garlands. The one place that had ever felt like it belonged to both of us." Valerie gently pushed a second document toward me. A letter, dated the same week, in my father's handwriting. "Claire has your eyes, Elaine, and your softness. I don't understand her, but sometimes when she looks at me without fear, I think maybe there's still something good in me. If I fail with her, then nothing else I build will mean anything." I stared at the words, the ink slightly smudged on one corner. It felt like touching something from another lifetime. Valerie cleared her throat. "In 2017, she said the will was amended. That paragraph was removed. The house was reassigned. You were omitted." "Why?" I whispered. She shrugged lightly. "That was around the time you publicly declined a scholarship to Columbia Law. He never told me outright, but it was clear he took it personally." Of course he did. He always had a version of me in his head, and I had failed to play her convincingly enough. "I thought staying silent was the ethical thing," Valerie said. "I see now that silence is sometimes complicity." I nodded slowly, my fingers brushing over the edge of the old letter. "I don't want the house," I said finally. "I just wanted to know if he ever—" I stopped myself, reframed. "If he ever saw me." Valerie's eyes softened. "He did. Once." The truth settled over me with strange weight. I wasn't unloved. I was conditionally loved, temporarily visible, and eventually expendable. That night back in our apartment, I sat on the floor while Ethan read the letter beside me. He didn't say much, just placed a hand gently on my back. "Does this change anything?" he asked. I looked at the ceiling, the past, the paper, all of it. "No," I said. "It explains everything, but it doesn't change anything." After a long silence, I picked up my phone and called Aunt Helen. She answered on the second ring. "Claire, I think I'm leaving New Jersey," I said, steady now, and this time, it's for good. I wasn't naive enough to hope, but when the invitation came, my heart still flinched. It arrived in a cream-colored envelope thicker than necessary, the handwriting unmistakably my mother's elegant restrained, as if even her cursive was trying not to take up too much space. Ethan held it up unopened. "You don't have to read it. I already was. Your father will be stepping down from the Bennett Foundation board after the new year. We're hosting a family dinner at Vellum House in Princeton, just us. We would like you to come." I folded the letter slowly. My throat had gone dry. "They want closure," Ethan said, arms crossed. "For themselves." I nodded. "Then let them have it. I'll bring mine too." The Vellum House was pristine, cold beautiful in a way that felt manufactured crystal chandeliers. Silver place settings, staff trained to vanish just before you realized they were there. We were led to a private dining room where a long, glossy table stretched like a runway between carefully arranged chairs. Mark stood first, adjusting his tie. "Claire." Lauren turned. "We weren't sure you'd come." "I know," I said simply. My father was already seated. He didn't rise, didn't smile, just nodded like I was a late arrival to a quarterly review. My mother sat beside him, Margaret Bennett, the woman whose name had always been at the edge of my memories, distant dim. She gave me a brief, almost startled look, then lowered her eyes. Ethan stayed quiet at my side, hands resting lightly on his lap like he was bracing for turbulence. Dinner began with pleasantries. Lauren described her latest philanthropic initiative in polished, neutral tones. Mark complimented the wine. No one acknowledged the elephant thudding through every course. I watched them all, observed the subtle avoidance the way my mother picked at her risotto like she was somewhere else entirely. My father sipped his whiskey, never once looking me in the eye. I waited. I listened. I let them finish their show. Then I spoke. So I said, setting down my fork, "Why was I invited?" Silence. Lauren blinked. Mark cleared his throat. "No one here is under any illusions," I continued. "This isn't about reconciliation. So what is it? Optics legal positioning before the foundation transitions?" My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Douglas looked to the side, jaw tight. I reached into my bag, pulled out a slim folder, and placed it in the center of the table. "This," I said, voice calm, "is the manuscript I've been working on. A memoir. Not spiteful, not exaggerated, just true." I let it sit there untouched. It's the story of a woman who was erased by people who claimed to love her until she remembered how to speak. No one moved. And then with a quiet finality, I added, "This is the story I wrote, while you were all trying to silence me. I didn't take the inheritance. I took back my voice." The press room at Lighthouse Press was warmer than usual that morning, not because of the old radiator humming under the windows, but because of the energy. It was a quiet buzz, like the anticipation before the first page of a new book. I stood in front of the podium, notes in hand, watching the modest crowd settle. Ethan sat in the back row, his hand raised in an encouraging wave when I met his eyes. I cleared my throat. "Thank you all for coming. Today isn't just a book launch. It's a return." Silence. Then the soft hum of phones clicking on to record. This anthology, I continued holding up the slim navy-bound volume, was written by voices that once went unheard. Each story is from someone who wasn't called to the family table, not because they had nothing to offer, but because they dared to bring something different. I flipped to the first page and read aloud the opening line. "I don't remember my family's voices as clearly as I remember the sound of forks scraping plates, because at least the plates didn't judge me for existing." There was a pause in the room, a collective holding of breath. Then scribbles of pens, the soft tapping of keys. Later in the hallway, one of the contributors, a shy young woman with ink-stained fingers, hugged me tightly. "You gave us a seat, Claire." "Thank you." That night, Lighthouse's inbox flooded with messages. Requests for copies, interview inquiries, stories from readers who finally felt seen. Someone tagged me in a tweet that read, "I read The Family Table in one sitting. I cried in the break room. I called my sister after." A week later, I was invited to speak on The Healing Hour, a nationally streamed podcast that tackled generational trauma. On the show, I was asked if the book was an act of revenge. I smiled gently. "No, it's not revenge. It's presence. It's saying I was here. I mattered even when they said I didn't." The momentum didn't stop. A glowing review landed in the Portland Literary Gazette, penned by Sheila Parson, a critic known for her sharp eye and sharper pen. But this time, her words were soft. "Claire Bennett doesn't write to punish. She writes to survive. Her prose is clean, unflinching, and tender where you least expect it." I clipped the review and pinned it above my desk. That afternoon, my phone rang with a number from Toronto. "This is Adelaine McCarthy from Indigo Shore Publishing," the woman said with a crisp Canadian accent. "We'd like to discuss acquiring international rights to The Family Table. We believe it belongs in the hands of more readers." I let out a quiet breath, barely aware that I'd been holding one in. I'd love to talk. Just after I hung up, my phone buzzed again. A message from Mark. "Dad's in the hospital. Mild stroke. I thought you'd want to know, not to rush back, just to be clear." I stared at the message. The words didn't sting the way I thought they might. They didn't soften me either. They simply landed. Facts, not wounds. I placed the phone face down, walked into the kitchen where Ethan was fixing tea, and whispered, "The world didn't end. It just changed." He handed me my cup and said, "Or maybe it finally started. I didn't come to reconcile. I came to see if there was anything left unbroken." The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and overripe flowers, too clean, too stale. Outside, rain streaked the window in long diagonal trails, blurring the view of the parking lot below. I stood at the threshold of room 614, my coat still wet from the walk through the side entrance. Ethan waited in the lobby, knowing I needed to do this alone. The last time I'd been in this building was nearly 15 years ago when Mom was receiving chemo. Back then, my father's presence had been a rarity. Business trips, conference calls, always something more pressing than holding her hand. I'd sat by her bedside most nights, pretending not to notice the second chair remained empty. Now he was the one in the bed. Douglas Bennett looked smaller than I remembered, his shoulders sunken, his frame swallowed by the crisp white sheets. A thin oxygen line curved beneath his nose. When he turned his head and saw me, his eyes flickered with surprise. Then something else. Not quite anger, not quite welcome. But he didn't ask me to leave. I stepped in and closed the door quietly behind me. The monitor beeped steadily. A nurse passed outside. For a full 3 minutes, neither of us spoke. Then, in a voice raspier than I remembered, he said, "The book. Your book. It's good." I didn't smile. "Thank you. Not all of it is about you." His mouth twitched slightly, maybe at the truth of it, or maybe at the way I delivered it so calmly. He opened his lips again, then closed them. The silence settled once more, this time, thinner, more fragile. I sat in the chair by his bedside but didn't lean in. The rain picked up outside, the rhythm tapping faintly against the glass. I studied his face, the once commanding jawline softened by time, the eyes that used to pierce now dulled by medication and age. "You don't have to say anything," I told him. "I'm not here for an apology." He looked toward the ceiling. Why, then I thought about it. To see if there's anything left that isn't broken. Between us. In me. I placed a hand gently on the edge of his blanket, not touching him, just anchoring myself in the space between us. "I'm not here to save you," I said quietly. "Only to witness." He turned his head slowly, studying me. "If you keep writing, don't erase all the good memories of your father." My throat tightened, but I didn't look away. "I'm not erasing them," I said. "I'm just done using them as a reason to keep enduring everything else." That was the only truth I had left to give him, and it was enough. Some families exist to teach you how to leave, and some places only begin to exist when you're brave enough to arrive. The sunlight in Portland had a strange kind of clarity, bright but cool. It spilled through the bay windows of our small apartment, landing in sharp angles across the hardwood floor, where our boxes still lay unopened. Outside, the city pulsed with a kind of quiet industry. Bikes zipped past the cafe below, a barista laughed behind steamed glass, and the distant hum of a food truck engine drifted in. Ethan was assembling our bookshelf, humming faintly. I stood by the window, holding the first hard copy of The Family Table without my name on it in both hands. The spine felt heavier than I expected, not just paper and ink, but weight. Proof. Memory. Triumph. He glanced over. "You're staring at it like it might talk." "It already has," I said, placing the copy on the top shelf, louder than I ever did. Our new Lighthouse press office was just 2 blocks away, a small storefront with big windows and a hand-painted sign that said, "Words Matter." The launch in Portland had been smoother than expected, maybe because we had nothing left to prove. Maybe because starting over wasn't about convincing anyone, it was about deciding to begin. That afternoon, I hosted our first community reading event. The chairs didn't match, and the space smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee, but people came. Not for drama, not for gossip. They came to listen. After I read a passage from the introduction about the ache of being deliberately excluded, someone asked, "How do you write your way out of something like that?" I smiled. "You don't write to escape it. You write to survive it." A teenager in the front row raised her hand. Her voice was shy but certain. "Your story helped me realize I don't have to keep going home if it hurts." Afterwards, she waited until the line dwindled to ask for an autograph. When I signed her copy, she whispered, "Thank you for making me feel less alone." As we walked back home, the sky shifted to a soft blue-gray, the scent of rain in the air. Ethan slipped his arm around my waist, and for the first time in years, my shoulders didn't resist. "You really think this is it?" he asked. Home I didn't need to think. Yes, he squeezed my side. Never thought we'd really do it. I glanced at him, warmth flooding my chest. Neither did I. Back inside, I moved through our apartment, placing pieces of myself into the Spacebook's candles. An old photo of my mother I hadn't looked at in years. There was a stillness to the place that didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Later that evening, I sat on the edge of the bed watching the sun sink below the rooftops. Ethan walked in quietly and knelt in front of me holding something in his hand. He opened the bag and pulled out a pregnancy test with 2 bold pink lines. You still think you're not enough? I once begged to have my name included in a Christmas greeting. Now it's etched on the door I built myself. The line wrapped around the corner of the bookstore. I hadn't expected that not here in this cozy Portland shop with creaky floors and secondhand rugs. But there they were, readers holding well-worn copies of The Family Table, without my name on it, bundled in coats and scarves, waiting patiently to meet the woman whose story had once been an online afterthought. Inside, the smell of paper and cinnamon tea mixed with the soft hum of conversation. I sat behind a modest folding table, a pen poised in my hand, smiling until my cheeks ached. Every person who stepped forward carried a piece of recognition, not of me, necessarily, but of something they'd felt too. You write like you've seen me, said a woman in her 60s. Like you looked inside my Thanksgiving. I wrote because I needed to be seen too. I said, signing her name next to mine. She squeezed my hand before leaving. The bell above the door jingled again, and this time I looked up to see someone I hadn't expected. Mark. He approached slowly, coat unbuttoned, eyes shadowed with something between fatigue and reluctant grace. I didn't come to argue, he said. I just came to do this. He pulled a sealed envelope from his coat pocket and slid it onto the table. Dad passed this morning. Stroke. Quick, they said. That's the last version of his will. He nodded toward the envelope. You might want to read it. I waited until he'd gone, no dramatic pause, no lingering glance before opening it. The document inside was brief, legal, cold, and final. He had left me the lake house. The small one. The one with peeling paint and wind chimes that used to drive him mad. The place Mom and I would sneak off to in the summers before silence took over our home. I folded the paper neatly and placed it in my bag. No tears, no relief. Just stillness. Not peace, but something quieter than rage. Later that afternoon, as the signing wrapped, Sheila clinked her cup against mine. You realize you've done what most of us spend a lifetime trying. What's that? Turned pain into architecture. You built something out of it. I didn't respond, but I felt the truth of it settle deep in my bones. Back at our office, small, sunlit alive, I stood in front of the door for a moment, the final brass plate already affixed. I reached out, brushed my fingertips across the engraving. Claire Bennett Voice and Memory Editions. The font was simple, no frills, just like I'd asked. A name no longer whispered or deleted, a presence no longer optional. I stepped inside the late afternoon light, warming the windowsill where our first edition sat proudly on display. From the shelf above, I pulled down a photo we had taken just last week, me and Ethan wearing matching sweaters holding mugs of cocoa, our first Christmas in Portland. She was smiling wide. He had flour on his cheek. There was no tree behind us, no extended family, no chaos, just us. She looked at the photo again, then smiled. There's no one missing. She never received an apology, nor expected one. But in reclaiming her voice, she dismantled the silence that once defined her and exposed the quiet cruelty of being erased. Because justice doesn't always roar, it sometimes arrives in a whisper, etched on a door that was once locked from the inside. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. And sometimes, building your own table is the only way to stop begging for a seat at theirs. If this story moved you, like, share and comment your thoughts below. Type 1. If you felt seen, or 2, if something still lingers unresolved.